crime scene, I want to share with you today the verse that I think of every time I come across a scene like this. It's a tough place to be. You got here a little bit later, but just a while ago, the mother was here. The family was here. They were upset. It was hard to see. It was hard to deal with the fact that we have to tape off this scene and make sure that it's safe, that nothing can be tampered with so we can find it. We had to pick the body up. We had to get it ready for the coroner. We had to do all these things so that we could start our investigation, and we had to make sure that we took the family and everybody downtown so that we could get statements from them, and here is what we're left with. And every time I come to this place, and I see these things, it makes me think of one passage from Romans chapter 5. I'm going to read it to you. And if you want to read along with it, you can. But you're going to have a front row seat today to this investigation. I'm glad you're here because we could use all the help that we can get. Romans chapter 5, verse 12 says this. Therefore, just as through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin. Thus death spread to all men because all have sinned. One man, death entered the world, and death has spread to all men. Everybody eventually will face death. It's not something that we can escape. It's something that we have to understand. It will happen. Hopefully we can get out of this life without experiencing ourselves in a scene like this. Without seeing our family cry, without seeing the sheets draped over our loved ones. Hopefully we can get through this thing in a way that doesn't end up in such a heartbreaking way that we're sitting here ready to do this. Because you cannot solve the problem that we face, and many times you cannot solve the problem and save the person. There is something that happens that you have to deal with. And so I'm glad you guys got here when you did. The investigators are just arriving, and they're going to help us go through this scene here. It's a tough place to be, but they're here, and they're going to help us get through this together. So keep your eyes open and make sure we don't miss anything. And the problem is that so many people have seen this scene in their life. We're still working to that. Would you see if you maybe can identify?
Seems very familiar.
Does he look familiar?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Seems like that person has been around before. Well, we're going to try to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to try to figure out what's happened. This has been a familiar sight to a lot of people's life. When you turn on the news, when you turn on the things that are going on, when you see everything that's happening over and over again, day after day after day, police were called to this street, police were called to that street, something's happened over here, something's happened over there, and every day we have to deal with the fact that something has happened and a plan of God has been destroyed. Sometimes it's destroyed for other reasons. Sometimes people think that they're justified in what they're doing. But scenes like this go through life every single day. People come by and they see the scene of the crime and they stop. They see the blood on the floor and they wonder what happened. They see the body laying there and they try to cover their children's eyes because we don't want innocents to see what the sin of man is able to create. Why does this stuff happen? People have asked me all the time, why does this stuff happen? Well, as we read in Romans 5, it happens because one person allowed the sinful nature of the enemy to come into this world, and ever since then, we've been dealing with scenes like this. Now, what I know as a Christian in my life, and what I know is that through scenes like this, God has offered a covering. That we don't have to worry about the death side of things because we know through death, on our physical death, we will receive eternal life. And so we can get up again. And it doesn't change the fact that we're upset. It doesn't change the fact that our family is upset. But we know that if we find ourselves in this position that we die physically, but we live eternally. And that is something that I hold great faith in. In these situations, stress levels are high, emotions are higher. A mother has lost her child, a baby has lost their daddy. A wife has lost her husband, all because someone wanted to take punishment and justice into their hands. And it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it okay that this stuff happens. I've been to the funerals. I've performed the funerals. I've seen what it looks like. For a pastor, there's not much harder to deal with than to be in a room full of family and friends and to have their loved one sitting here in the middle of the room and everybody's looking at it and everybody's crying and person after person comes up and they say what this person meant to them. And you have to listen at the family scream and cry and break down, and there's nothing harder to deal with than that moment. Why? People like to get upset. They like to get mad. They like to focus on the negative things. They like to focus on what God is doing. They like to focus on, well, if God really cared, my loved one wouldn't be here. If God really cared, my loved one wouldn't be over here. Why does this have to happen? Why does it have to happen? Why? Tim, can you come here? Can you see if you can identify the body? I'm going to ask a few of you throughout this investigation if you can identify that body. Just open that bag up and take a look in there and see if you recognize the person in the bag. Does he look familiar? Okay. I think we're going to have an okay time identifying this person, but it'll be through tears. I have heard the cries of family members, and I've seen the anger in their eyes. And I've been there for lots of things. I've been there for accidental deaths. I've been there when people were just sick and they died from their disease. I've been there even in these situations, in murders. I've been there and I've seen it, and I know what it does to the family when somebody that is loved and so close to you is snatched from your life. When a person who means so much to you is taken before you were ready for them to go. It's a tough place. When the time comes, all bets are off, and I've seen everything. I've seen misplaced rage. I've seen people yell at the wrong people and blame the wrong people, and they know who did it, and they know where they're at, and they're locked up, and instead of putting their blame and their anger and their rage on the person who did it, we take it out on everybody else because it's easier to deal with it when I don't have to deal with the people. I can get past my loss when I don't have to do it with other people around me. They deal with everything else, and they scream at the wrong people. They yell at the wrong people. They take it out on the wrong people. And every day it happens. I wouldn't wish this scene on anybody. But maybe you've been there. Maybe you've drove down the road and you've seen this scene. Maybe you lived a lifestyle that brought you to this scene. Maybe you know the person that is laying right here, whose body we have outlined. Maybe you know this person. Maybe. Maybe you don't. Dustin, can you try to identify this body right here? Take a peek in there and see if you can identify the body in that bag. Tell me, does it look familiar? Okay. Yet here we are. I know normally we come in here and at this part of the message we're laughing and giggling because I got funny stories, but in the realness of life, when it hits you in your face, sometimes it's not all that funny. Sometimes we got to deal with things that we didn't want to deal with, and we got to do things that we didn't want to do. And every day can't be a fun day. Every day can't be exciting. Every day can't be laughter when there are people who are missing out on everything. Wednesday, we came into church and we were talking about some different things, and we started a new study. I think it's going to go very well. It's ministered to me a lot, and we were talking, and I asked everybody in the room how different, how long they'd been serving God. And if I can, I'll tell you that Jeremy's answer was a few days, because last Sunday, Jeremy gave himself to Jesus for the first time. And if you don't celebrate that, then I'm a little bit ashamed of anything. But whether it's just a few days, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, God has a specific purpose for us. And if we put ourselves in the wrong place, this is where we end up. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're going to physically end up laying here outlined in masking tape. What I'm saying is that if we miss out on the call of God, our spiritual purpose, our existence, our happiness, our well-being, our joy, our hope, our peace, everything that God has intended to fill us with lays right here, shot, destroyed, hurt, beat up. Because we thought we knew what was better, and we decided we were going to do it our way, and our way ends up right here. What do you do when you know that you can't lead yourself, but you're too stubborn to let it go? You're too stubborn to let it die. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the evidence. We have to look at the different evidence. We have 5 evidence markers, and we're going to take a journey through our crime scene today, and we're going to look at all the different evidence markers. And we have our detective here, and we have our forensic photographer extraordinaire here, and they are going to do their thing, and we are going to solve this thing together. And the first piece of evidence I want to look at is hair. Thought about having Dustin collect the hair for me, but I didn't. Appreciate that. Exhibit A is the hair. Hair is sort of a sore subject for some of us. Obviously not Jeremy. We don't like to talk about hair because we miss what we once had. There you go. There's your laughter. But it's crucial evidence in our investigation, and so we have to talk about it. I heard a story about a young teenage boy who wanted his dad to buy him a car for a graduation present. And his dad told him, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll buy you a car for your graduation present, but you got to do 3 things. You have to get straight A's on your report card. You have to get a job and pay your own insurance. And he had long hair, and he said, you have to cut your hair. And so the son went out, and he got himself a job, and he held it for a while, and he could pay his own insurance. He got straight A's in school, and it was about graduation time, and he came up to his dad, and he said, Dad, I've done 2 out of the 3 things. The last one is get a haircut. And I want you to know, Dad, I know that you're a Christian man and that you believe and you've raised us to believe the Bible. And so I did some research and I looked through the Bible. And in the Bible, I found that Samson was not supposed to cut his hair. I found that Jesus had long hair. The disciples, most of them that weren't bald, had long hair. And so I think it's a little hypocritical of you to raise us to be like these guys and then tell me I got to cut my hair. And he said, you're right, son. They did have long hair. And they also walked everywhere they went. Hair is important to some people. Hair can tell you so much about a person. But the greatest evidence you can find in hair is when the follicle is still attached to it. When the follicle is still attached to it, you can get DNA off the hair that you couldn't get from just necessarily a strand. Now, if you find a strand of hair, you can compare the two under a microscope, and you can say whether they're the same hair, whether it's human hair, whether it's dog hair. And so when you go up on a crime scene like this, and there's all kinds of stuff, and we got all this stuff that could tamper with the evidence and stuff that the wind could blow in, and all this stuff is going on, we have to be real secure in what we're picking up. We have to identify everything and pick it up and look through every single inch of this crime scene. But when the follicle is attached to the hair, it's so much more important. Jesus said in Matthew 10 that the very hairs of your head are numbered, that God knows exactly how much hair you have. And somebody came up to me and said, I guess it's an easy one for you, isn't it? I know how many hairs you have. And I said, the follicles, you dum-dum, not what grows, what's supposed to be there. You can get DNA from a follicle. Something so small and often forgot about. I wonder when we were dealing with this and when this whole scene was going down, I wonder if they thought about watching out for their hair, because even something so small as a hair can be a deal breaker for the freedom of the person who did this. We have a victim, we have a subject, and we don't know whose hair it is yet, but we know it came from somebody, and so we got to check it out. We have to take it all back. It's been picked up, it's been collected, it's been photographed. We know exactly where it was laying in relation to the scene. We obviously know there had to be more than one person. We have bullet casings over here. We have a body over here. There had to be some sort of transaction, because when you're in this position, it's never easy to go without a fight. It's never easy to go. He's got the gun, but the casings are over there. Did somebody even get a shot off? Or did whoever they was fighting hit them so fast and so quick that all they could do was give in? I don't know. That's a tough question. That's a tough one. Michael, will you see if you can identify this for me? Just zip that bag open and take a look in there. In Judges 16, we probably see the most accurate depiction of the importance of hair. There was a guy you might have heard of. His name was Samson. And Samson was famous for being strong. Everybody was afraid of Samson. He could do anything. The Philistines didn't like Samson. The Philistines were supposed to be the enemy of God's people, but every time Samson came on the scene, they was like, hold on, back up. We can't be messing with this joker. Killed 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey. Didn't even play no games, just went in there swinging it. And then he found this girl, and he hooked up with this girl. And people like to give Samson a bad reputation because, see, God told him you can't do this, you can't do that. And people think, well, if Samson hadn't been chasing those girls, he wouldn't have gotten into that trouble. There's a message for you gentlemen that might be single in here. Watch who you're chasing. Watch whose lap your head is laying in, because you might get a haircut that you didn't anticipate. And Samson was walking around, and people like to say, if he hadn't been chasing Delilah, if he had only been doing what, see, he was supposed to be a Nazarene, and so he wasn't supposed to drink any alcohol, touch any dead body, cut his hair. He wasn't supposed to do any of those things. And all of a sudden, he's laying in Delilah's lap. But the thing that we miss is that Samson was married, and the enemies of God came in, and they killed his wife. And when they killed his wife, Samson said, forget it. I'm done. Because when you see the scene, you lose hope. When Samson went over here and he seen her and he said, what happened? How did you get here? How did you get to this place? I'm done. So he started chasing whoever he got with Delilah. He laid his head in Delilah's lap, and she was rubbing his hair, and she said, I thought you loved me. He said, I do love you. And she said, then why aren't you telling me where your strength comes from? And this ding-dong tells her the wrong answer, and then she does it. And then this genius tells her another answer, and she does it again, and he still has not learned that she's trying to get you. She is trying to take you out. Because when you have a purpose from God, there is somebody always ready to try to take you out. There is somebody that wants to stop your purpose, that wants to stop you from living what God has called you to be, that wants to stop you from being everything that God made you to be. You have a purpose, but Delilah's right there saying, I thought you loved me. Maybe your Delilah looks different. Maybe your Delilah comes in a bottle and you got to pop the top and pour a little bit out. Maybe that's your Delilah. Maybe your Delilah gets put into a glass tube and smoked. Maybe your Delilah gets injected through a needle. Maybe your Delilah is found on a website. Maybe your Delilah is somebody you work with, and they're pulling you away from the plan of God for your life. But you like the way it feels, so you don't pay no attention to it. Because when Delilah's around, there's always something to be thinking about. There's always an enemy. And there she was. Samson didn't even think nothing about it. He let his feelings get in the way. Jeremiah 17:9 says that the heart is deceitful above all else. Who can know it? And people will walk around and they will say things like, follow your heart, bad advice. The heart is deceitful. The heart is deceitful. It will trick you, and it will get you to think that you need somebody that you were never meant to be with. It will get you to think that you're missing somebody that was never yours. It'll get you to think that you want to be with somebody that God has not intended you to be linked up with. The heart is deceitful above all else. But Samson didn't care. He liked it. His hair was his strength. His hair was his strength to do good, his strength to fight for God. His hair was everything, but he had a shift in his feelings. And have you ever had a shift in your feelings? Let's put ourselves in Samson's shoes. And let me tell you, whenever you get a shift in your feelings and you follow your heart, the shift always leads to a shaving. And then your power is gone. And then what God has intended you to be is gone. Because you gave it away. You told somebody, take it. The shift always leads to a shaving. We shift our priorities. We shave our power. So we have to collect the hair. See what it tells us. Second thing that we have to understand is the fingerprints. The fingerprint evidence. While we don't know where we can pull fingerprints necessarily from, we do know that there's probably fingerprints that can be pulled off of this firearm. So our investigator and our photographer are going to check the evidence, and they're going to make sure it all works good. And they're going to see what we can do and how we can determine the fingerprints. And every time I go to a scene like this and I think about pulling fingerprints, I think about what a fingerprint means. How are you guys doing? Is there anything that you've come up with that we should know? Not yet? Okay. Keep working.
Positive, fingerprint.
Okay. Okay. All right. Jamie, will you come see if you can identify this body? Fingerprints are important. And every time I come and I think, I know that at one point, okay, you could probably pull fingerprints off of these. Don't ask me how I know, but I do know that there is a way you can put bullets in the magazine with a bandana to where there are no fingerprints on the bullet. That's none of your business how I know that. Let's just say that I know that. So I do know that it is possible that we may not get fingerprints off of this, but this person was not wearing gloves, so there has to be fingerprints on that weapon. There has to be fingerprints. And I think about what a fingerprint means, how a fingerprint is different. Everybody's fingerprint is different. Yours is different than mine, is different than Jeremy's, is different than Tim's, is different than everybody's. We are unique, even if it's just by our fingerprint. Unique. Just by your fingerprint. And I think about that, and I thought about Genesis chapter 1. And I thought about verse 26 when God says, let us make man in our own likeness and in our own image. And I think about that passage, and I think, is my fingerprint the very likeness of God? When I touch something, you can't see it, but if I come over here and I go like that, I can see my fingerprint on this. Am I looking at the very intelligent design of God? Well, you can't say that because, what had happened was the universe just farted, and then it created everything, and that's what happened. No. The universe cannot just accidentally create something as intricate as a fingerprint. We were last year in the wintertime, we were doing some, or maybe it wasn't last year, or maybe it was the year before, but we were actually at Christina's house, and it was snowing, and it was right when Stephanie moved, so it was like her first real experience with the snow actually falling. And so Chastity looked over. I think it was this time. If I'm getting my stories confused, just pipe down. I think it was this time, but she looked over at one point, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, look at that snowflake." And it had landed right on Stephanie's hair. And she goes, "It looks just like it does in a movie." It is. I didn't know they really looked like that. And she had us all come over there very delicately and look at the snowflake that was caught. And she's got pictures of it. And we looked at this snowflake that was caught in Stephanie's hair. And I got to admit, I was a little impressed too, because it looks just all decorative and elaborate and symmetrical, which is super important. And it was awesome. Was that an accident? Is your fingerprint an accident? Let us make man in our likeness, in our image. The person who was laying here, this person was made in God's likeness and in God's image. This was the purpose of God that somebody had eliminated. Would you come here and see if you can check this out? Come here. Come here. Yeah, you can come up here in front of everybody. Come up here and see if you can identify this person in this bag. Go ahead. See if you can check it out and see who's in there. You ain't have to open it like that. Sweet Jesus, you trying to identify the whole body. I just needed you to look at the face on that body. My Lanta. Okay. Thank you so much. Did you recognize the person? Okay, good. So we're good. So the fingerprints. The fingerprints are very important. They show what you're made of. They show your identity. A police officer or somebody can take your fingerprint and they can type it into a computer, not your fingerprint, but they can put the picture of your fingerprint in the computer, and you can tell I'm really a good detective with all my knowledge. And they can take your fingerprint, they can put it into their computer, and they can know everything you've done, every place you've lived, everywhere. If you are in that system remotely, they can tell you everything about you just by your fingerprint. Your fingerprint is important. And so I believe, guys, that we could probably get some pretty good evidence off that weapon. Not only do we have a weapon, which is extremely valuable, but we have the fingerprints on the weapon. So if we have trouble identifying the body through everything that we're doing, I think we could probably get a good identification off of the gun. Off the gun. Christina, will you come see if you can identify this body, please? It's hard to be in this place, and we're collecting everything, and it's difficult to even just sit in the same room with the body. It's hard to be in the same room. And you guys thought I'm going to go to church. Her first day, I'm going to go to church today because I told him when he ate that big pancake, I would come to church. And now she's like, what did I walk into? I need to go on back to my church because these people are cray-cray. It's all right. It's all right. We got to solve this thing. I need your help. They need your help. We're going to do this together. The third piece of evidence is a footprint. Surprisingly enough, the footprint is what I could spend the most time on. You might think the fingerprint, you might think the body, you might think the blood, you might think all that, and that's all true. I could probably spend an hour on each piece of evidence, but the footprint is very important. You can tell a lot of things about a footprint. I can tell you that this footprint right here, what size would you say that is, detective?
Male size 10.
Male size 10? Okay. So you can get from that, you can get about the size of a person. You know, if he's a full-grown person like me or a lesser-grown person like yourself, you can tell.
This individual would resemble me more.
So is that an admission of guilt? Okay, no. Okay. So you never know what you're going to find, but you can tell a lot from something as easy as a footprint. I can tell that this guy was wearing K-Swiss shoes because he has impeccable taste. All right, well, I'm doing this investigation, so pipe down. Okay. You can be head detective of the next one. I forgot what I was saying. You can tell the direction somebody was moving. You can tell the direction they came from. This footprint right here was fleeing away from this part. What happened right here that made somebody run away? What happened? Why was this person running? Obviously something bad happened, and that's probably why they were running. And the footprint had blood on it, so you know they had to be pretty close to the scene. And so all of a sudden, we're dealing with all these things, and we never stop to think about where they came from. And the problem, or the benefit that you can get from a footprint is you know where somebody came from. And so many times in life, we get to these situations and we like to look at people and we like to say negative things about people. And we would say if they had their stuff together, they wouldn't be dealing with what they're dealing with. If they would put a little more effort into being a good employee, they wouldn't worry about being fired, not have to pay their bills. If they was worried about their own family and not everybody else's business, they wouldn't be going through the trouble in their marriage that they're going through. And so we think about all this stuff, but we don't take the time to look at the footprint and know where they came from. You can know a lot about somebody by what they've walked through, by what they've been through. For the victim, you think, how did they get here? Were they taken here against their will? Were they ambushed when they thought they were safe? Were they by themselves, alone? There was a sidewalk where we used to live. Surprise, there's sidewalks everywhere. There was a long sidewalk where we used to live. And there was a canal on one side, and there was woods on the other side, and there was only two ways you could get to this sidewalk, and they were separated by a very long distance. And so every time we would try to walk somewhere at night, the quickest route was to go through that sidewalk. And we would walk through that sidewalk, and whether we were going to the house or coming from the house would determine where we entered. And then there was just a long stretch. And there was houses on the other side of the canal, but it was literally just a canal and woods. And people would get down in those woods, and they would wait for somebody to walk by. So, in fact, we had a friend who was walking by there who got ambushed by 3 different guys, and he had to fight his way out of this. And he ended up leaving okay, but he had to fight because he found himself struggling. But you don't know where somebody's coming from. You don't know where somebody's going. The footprint just tells you where they're at. And so we look at our life and we wonder where we came from. And we're confused about where we're going. But we know where we're at. And a lot of times we don't like where we're at. Where we're at is difficult. Where we're at is hard. And so we don't want to be where we're at. You know what I'm saying? That's the tough part. Hey, come here. Can you come? Larry's like, you better go because he sure ain't talking to me. You better. I needed to get somebody from the unclean section to see if they can identify the body. See if you know who that is in there. Do you? Think we're going to be okay. No one stepped in when he was alone. No one stepped in to help. In my lonely and broken condition, I was left to wander. And that's the story of myself. That's the story probably of a lot of people. No one stepped in when you were broken, and no one stepped in when you were depressed, and you're left to wander by yourself, and you're wandering around and around and around, and you're wondering, what is going to happen? And I don't want to end up here, but I also don't want to be this person, because either way, the life is changed completely. So what am I doing with my life? How do I not end up in a bad situation? How do I get better? How do I do this? What happens? In my lonely and broken condition, I was left to wander. When I was growing up, my mother loved the footprints poem thing, the footprints in the sand. Have you heard that? I thought it was so well known that I wouldn't have to read it to y'all, but you're looking at me like I got 4 eyeballs. I do, I guess, technically, but footprints in the sand, she loved it. She would had it in the house, and she would read it, and she would tell us about it all the time. And like, we were not a church-going family, so like every time she'd be like, God was carrying him, I'd be like, shut up. No one cares about your footprints thing, mother. Quiet down. Not interested. She told us about it all the time. And she would see it. I would realize later that she would see it, and she would see it in us, the footprints poem. Because I seen her cry at night, wondering where Tim was at. And Tim seen her cry at night, wondering where I was at. And Josh seen her cry at night and fall asleep in a bed of tears, wondering where me and Tim were at. And over, a non-church-going, non-religious people, she would fall down and she would say, God, please protect my babies. And we needed some protection because we was doing some things we shouldn't have been doing, things that led to this type of scenario. Please be with my baby. I remember one time Tim was gone for like 4 days, and usually he would always tell me where he was at because we knew when Mom went to work, and so he would call the house, and he would at least let me know what was going on, see if I wanted to come by or do whatever. But he was gone for like 4 days, and I watched my mother every night go to bed upset and cry on her pillow, and I would tell her, he's okay, he's tough, he can do it. And I remember by like the 3rd night, after not hearing nothing from Tim, I went into my room, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what was happening. But I just got down next to my bed and I said, God, I don't do anything right, but I know that you're good, and I'm asking you to please keep my brother safe. I don't know where his footprints are right now. I don't know if he's by himself. I don't know if he's safe. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know if he's with somebody. I'm asking you And I just said the same thing over and over again for probably 2 hours. And I don't even know that Tim knows this, but I did it. I got down and I just, for such a long time, and I just said the same sentence over and over again. Please keep Tim safe. Please keep Tim safe. Please keep Tim safe. Please guide his footprints. I could say it different now, but then all I knew how to say was, please keep him safe. And he did. He came back. Obviously, because he's sitting here. We love to talk about someone else's journey without ever knowing where their footprints came from. Not knowing what that person walked through. You look at things that don't give us the whole picture. We look at somebody and say, that person needs to lose a little bit of weight. But we don't realize that where those footprints came from was a person who struggled with their weight to the point of 600 pounds. So now 200 pounds to them is a victory. 200 pounds to us is judgment. They need to get themselves in order. They're going to have a heart attack and die in front of their children. You don't know what I came through. You can't determine where I'm standing. They need to stop smoking. I just overcame a heroin addiction. Let me quit one thing before you jump on another thing, please. I don't know what you walked through. Why are you so jumpy? I talked to somebody yesterday. I am a jumpy. Tim is probably the same. He might even be more so, but I am a jumpy person. What we did does not, even when I go home to this day, I know I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not doing anything, but when I go back to my mother's house, I stay in the house. I don't leave the house. If I leave the house, I go from the car to the restaurant we're going to and back to the car. I wear a hat. I keep my hat pulled down low. I do everything to make sure I'm out of everybody's eyesight. Don't nobody need to be knowing that I'm around. I don't tell nobody I'm there. I don't broadcast it. I don't post pictures until after I'm gone. I don't do nothing because I worry that somebody is going to be mad about something I did 20 years ago and come back and decide they want to take it out on me now. That they want to find me and they want to find my wife and they want to find my kids and they want to create a scene like this just because they have never gotten past some nonsense that I did as a teenage kid, and now they want to come back. I believe the late philosopher Tupac said some young buck coming up from way back. I don't remember the whole line, but he was saying that somebody was coming back to get him from something that happened way back there, and now all of a sudden they're coming back way up here, and they don't realize that your footprints have walked you to a new place in your life, and all they can say is, I want to get back at the person who hurt me. I want to get back at the husband who cheated on me. I want to get back at the children that left me. I want to get back at the father or the mother who walked away when I needed them the most, but we don't know where their footprints came from, and we don't know where their footprints are going. We look at the right now, and we make a determination. I'm jumpy because I always feel like somebody's watching. No, I always feel like I always feel like somebody's trying to get me. Michael really liked that one. Last week he was silently laughing. Today he's letting it out. I always feel like somebody's trying to get me. And I know they're not. But those footprints from back there, they still make me worry. A life change is a journey. It's a redirection of your footprints. It's saying, I'm not this person no more. I can stand up and be something different. I don't have to be what I was. Lisa, will you see if you can identify this body? I don't have to be what I was no more. I don't have to go back to what I was doing. I don't have to do all the things that I thought I would do. I can be something different because my footprints have changed. It's a redirection. Yeah? Okay. I've never forgotten the Footprints poem because I look back over my life and there are plenty of times that there was just one set. Not just one set when I was doing foolish stuff. One set when I was living for God. And it's hard to say, I'm going to give everything to God when I look back and just see one set of footprints. It's hard to determine that I'm going to give everything to God when I don't really feel like sometimes God has given everything to me, detective. I don't feel like I can give everything to somebody. Isn't a relationship supposed to be you give, I give? I feel like I'm giving and giving and giving. And I'm just standing here by myself with one set of footprints. And in my mind, I don't realize that, just like the poem says, those are the times that God is carrying me. He's carrying me. He's carrying you through abandonment issues, through fights, through divorce, through hurt, through pain, through troubled times, through dangerous seasons, through addictions that should have killed you and put you in the ground. He's carrying you when you keep going back to the same relationship because you think that's all you can get. Nobody else will want me. Look at where I've let myself be. Look at what I've become. Nobody else can want me. I've tried with that person. I've tried with that person. I've tried with that person. And all I can get is this. Yeah, he don't treat me right. Yes, she don't treat me right. But it's all I can get in my life, because this is where my footprints have brought me, and that is a lie to keep you away from being loved to the fullness of God's ability, because God has somebody planted that is standing right there that will say, no matter what you do, no matter what you act like, no matter how you live, I will be here. There are some times that I want to throw Chastity out the bedroom window on the second floor and just go stand by that window. Open it and knock the screen out, because I don't want to hurt the screen. Go stand by that window. I'm telling you what I know. Judge me if you want to. There are some times she wants to light me on fire, and I'm ready to give her the matches. But you don't quit. You don't quit, because I know that God has put her here with me. What we do in this church is super difficult. And I understand that you guys can come in and you guys can spend, let's say, 2 hours total from the time you get here to the time you leave. Unless you wait around with all the after lunch who's going where debates, then it's all bets are off. But if you come from the time you get here to the time you walk out the door, and you spend 2 hours, that's church for your week. If you come on Wednesday night, if you're one of the faithful few, and you come on Wednesday night, then that's, say, 3.5 hours of your entire week that you're giving to God. But for me and for Chastity, for our children who are up here every time we're up here, they love the fact that they're old enough to stay home now. But they'll be like, why do we have to go to the church again? I don't want to go to the church today. I don't want to go to the church tomorrow. I want to go to the church Sunday, and that's it. I just want to go. So can we just not do this? Can we just go on Sundays? And I'm like, no, we can't, because what we do with our footprints is going to help somebody else find their footprints. What I do, how I lead, how I guide, what I do is able to help somebody else walk away from something that's killing them. And we get the phone calls, and we get the text messages, and we don't get emails, but if you wanted to email, I mean, why not? We get everything else. But it's because people need help finding their footprints. Tricia, will you identify this body for me? People need help finding the footprints. And that's what we're doing. I was alone, I was hurt, but I get thankful when I look back and see just one set of footprints. You recognize that? Okay. I get upset when I see one set of footprints, but then I realize, wait a minute, that's when He didn't leave me, He was carrying me. He was walking me through the stuff that would have killed me. He was walking me through the things that I could have died from. God is doing something new, and He's carrying me out of this situation. I'm not alone. He's with me. There's the quiet down music. So let me finish with my last couple things. Exhibit D is the bullet casings. In many investigations, this is the most obvious evidence. It's often the first thing found. It's right out in the open. There's almost always evidence that a weapon was used, either at the scene or on the body itself. You can always know that there is a weapon that was used somewhere. It's evident by the evidence that you find. There are 5 bullet casings here. It makes me think that it wasn't just a one-shot thing. It wasn't a David and Goliath where he could throw one. There's 5 shots here. It took multiple attempts to get this person. I'm going to try to start winding this down, and you may figure out where I'm going, but multiple attempts, not just one, not just two, sometimes not just 5. Sometimes it takes week after week, day after day, month after month, for somebody to really be hit, for somebody to really experience what's happening. The bullet casings are something that even with a fight or flight scenario, if you choose flight, even in these difficult times, even the most scared person will fight. If you mess with my family, I will fight. If you try to kill me, I will fight. If you come against my purpose, I will fight. And sometimes the problem is we're fighting against somebody that's not trying to hurt us, but they are trying to kill us. And that might not make sense. If you give me a second, I'm going to unwind it. Not trying to hurt you, but he is trying to kill you. Not trying to hurt you. Not trying to hurt you. He doesn't want to hurt you, but he does want to kill you. Because in order to live for Christ, you have to die to your sin. You have to die to yourself. In order for God to really speak to your heart, sometimes it takes multiple shots. Sometimes it takes multiple sermons. Sometimes it takes multiple efforts. And sometimes it's not even that he's shooting it at you. It's that you've started to feel so guilty in yourself that sometimes the death is a self-inflicted wound because you know you have to change. And the only way to live is to die. It doesn't make natural sense, but it makes eternal sense. It makes spiritual sense. The only way to live is to die. Jesus said, what gain does it have for someone to gain the world and lose their soul? Now, if this is a murder investigation, this person, I've been around enough to know that these scenes that I've watched every episode of the first 48. And I know that these scenes never happen with somebody just walking to church casually. Even the innocent people that are shot are in the wrong place at the wrong time. Every time. But what if the death that I'm talking about isn't physical, but it's spiritual? Will you come identify this body, Corbin? What if the death that I'm talking about is not physical, but spiritual? The victim didn't go easy. You recognize him? The victim didn't go easy. Let me tell you something. It's not always easy to give up everything you know. You fight back because I don't want to change everything I am. And so I'm going to fight, and the shots are going to keep coming, and I'm going to keep feeling convicted in my heart. And every time I say that thing that I know I shouldn't say, I'm going to feel like another shot hit me. And every time I go to a place that I know I shouldn't be, another shot's going to hit me. And I'm going to keep fighting, and I'm going to keep fighting, and I'm going to keep fighting, because I will not go quietly. If you want me, you're going to have to come get me. You issued a challenge to the wrong person. God cannot be defeated. And now we lay right here, dead to what we used to be. This is what Jonathan used to be. Jonathan went from there to this bag. You want to know who's in this bag? Let me show you who's in this bag. This is who's in this bag. Everybody who's been identifying that body is looking at themselves. This is who's in that bag. Look at them. Can you identify that body? Can you identify that person? That's the person that's laying here. That's the person that God's trying to reach. The last evidence that we need to look at is the blood. I'm skipping a bunch of stuff to get to the bottom of this, but I think we've already figured out who our victim is. I think we've already figured out a little bit of what happened here. Are you trying to say, Pastor, that God is a murderer? No, I'm trying to say that God is a life giver. But in order to get the life that he's giving, you have to give up the life that you're living. You cannot hold on to both of them at the same time. It's not possible. And the detectives are going to bag this evidence because it's important. The blood is the most important evidence. It doesn't matter about the gun. It doesn't matter about the fingerprints. The bullet casings don't matter. The hair is irrelevant. What matters is the blood. The blood is the single most important evidence that we can face. I want to read you something from Hebrews. While nobody really knows who wrote the book of Hebrews, the evidence that is found in the book of Hebrews is wonderful. Chapter 9, verse 12. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 12. It says, not with the blood of goats and calves. They used to have to bring these animals in and kill these animals. And the Hebrew writer says, not with the blood of goats and calves. Not with the blood that doesn't matter. But with his own blood, he entered the most holy place once and for all, having obtained eternal redemption. The DNA in that blood does not match the victim. It's not the victim's blood. But if you notice, the DNA and the blood was on the victim. Because you have to go through the blood. The DNA matches the cross. And the first person to ever be found not guilty by Jesus was a man we arrested a couple weeks ago. You remember picking up Barabbas? That dude was bad. He confessed to the murders. We had him in the interrogation room for no longer than 30 minutes, and he said, I did it. And we threw him in the jail. And then all of a sudden, his lawyer comes in. And his lawyer says, I want my client released. And I said, you can't have him. He's already confessed. He already admitted it. And he said, I know, but I want you to take me instead. And I said, are you joking? And the lawyer said, no, I want my client to go free, and I'm willing to give you myself. But you can't do that. He did the crime, but I'm ready to do the time. And against my better judgment, I let Barabbas go, wondering if he would ever do it again. And I put the lawyer in there. It's a real world example to say that the blood of Jesus is what sets you free. The blood of Jesus is what gives you life. The blood on our body here is not our own. It's the blood of God that covers us in our fallen condition. Here we have a fallen body covered by his blood, covered by the blood of God, the very blood that gives life. It says he went in to the most holy place once and for all. Every year, once a year, the high priest would have to go in to the Holy of Holies, and he would have to atone for the people. One guy could atone for everybody. That's not the way it works no more. I can't give myself to Jesus and give you salvation. You can't come up front and say, I want to receive salvation, and then walk away and go back into your fallen condition. Salvation comes when you get up off the ground and you walk that out. When God, see, because what I need you to understand is that the conviction of God, you could even say God himself, will put you down there and will bring you to the crime scene. But the very same God will reach out his hand to pick you back up. And he will dust you off and he will say, I got you. I got you. Don't worry about needing that person. I got you. Don't worry about needing that substance. I got you. I got you. You can't do one and not do the other. So you can't just come up and say, I'll pray. Let me tell you what I know. I seen Jeremy come up front. And after everybody left, they was like, we want to get baptized, but we don't got no clothes. And Chastity actually went home and got clothes so that they could be baptized. And everybody was gone, so it was just us. But we put the pictures on Facebook so everybody could see it. Jeremy wanted to be baptized, but when he came up, he told me, I want to be baptized, but I knew I had to take care of that first. And we went somewhere yesterday with Jeremy and Salima. We went up to Avila and went to a block party at another church. We did some stuff. We've talked to him several times throughout the week. Monday, Jeremy had somebody come over that wanted to talk to me about some stuff. Jeremy did not just leave his salvation right here, and he did not just leave his salvation in the tank. He got up and he's trying to walk it out every day, just like I tried to walk it out every day, just like you will try to walk it out every day. You can't just leave it here at the altar. You can't leave it in the baptism tank. You have to take that with you and live it every day. Doesn't mean he's perfect. Has he made mistakes this week? Okay. Do you still love him? God loves you even more than that. But it's something that has to be a change inside. And I've watched Jeremy this whole week. Not every day. We ain't spent every day together. He's not a stalker like that. But we've spent a lot of time together. He's texted me. He's called me. And I've seen Jeremy try. Seen Jeremy come in, which is not popular these days, but Jeremy came in with his own Bible that his eyes are too bad to read, and even gave it a shot trying to read. He was like, but he's trying. Because Jeremy knows what it's like to be down here. And Jonathan knows what it's like to be down here. And let me tell you what I know. Down there is painful. Down there hurts. But God is there to pick you back up. So that when somebody's sitting down on their bed praying, bring my brother back home, or somebody's sitting down at their coffee table saying, bring my child back home, or somebody's sitting down, at their desk at work on their lunch break, not caring what anybody says, saying, please bring my family back home. The same person that picked me up, the same person that picked our victim up, is right here. And we ignore them every day. Every day. We go out and we live our own life. We do our own thing. And we say, all right, God, I'll see you next Sunday. And maybe I'll be inconvenienced by having to get up early and go to church. Maybe I won't. Maybe I don't mind. Maybe I'll go up front and I'll say I'm going to pray, and I'll actually pray and I'll repeat the words, and then I'll leave and I'll just go back to the same thing I've been laying in. It's hard to fight an enemy that you're sleeping with. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. That was personal. It's hard to fight an enemy that you're intimate with. Would you pray with me? God, I ask that you would watch over us today. I thank you for something so easy as just the ability to walk to you. And it's not because we are pursuing you. We're running from you most of the time. It's because you are pursuing us. And when we come to you and we give ourselves to you, it's not because we chased you down. It's because you chased us down and we stopped. We turned around and we spoke to you. The same God who spoke to our heart. The same God who loves us. The same God who lived for us a perfect life, who died for us. You're chasing us. So God, I ask that you would just continue to speak to us today.